anything else that stood out to you, especially about the run game and what prevented that from being successful?
Yeah, I think honestly some of the errors that happened were somewhat shocking to me. Just looking back at the film, maybe the lack of communication and the miscounts in the box are things that we can't have happen. At times, false stepping and just not, applying the right technique. And then I think a little bit maybe the situation got to some of the guys. And so from the film, there's a ton to learn from. It was good to meet with the guys and just kind of get it out of our system and take the next step forward when they return this evening to really turn a page for what is going to be a tough week this week. So we got to improve. There's no question about it in so many ways. There are, certain people that I do think played well. I think Jackson for his first game, looking back at that, was, with the situations that he was put in, he rose to a lot of those moments, threw the ball well. But there's areas in which he needs to improve too. Just like all of us, nobody's perfect, but we got to make sure that our intent is perfect in how we prepare moving forward.
You talked a lot about why Jackson won the job. I wanted to ask about Zevi and maybe just what you didn't see from him in camp that maybe would have changed your decision. Is there a role for Zevi going forward, and what would you need to see from him in that way?
Yeah, I would say, for one, Zevi's a great person, great leader and speaker on this team. He's got a great connection with everybody on the team. It was a really close race. It wasn't really what Zevi isn't. It's just more so what Potter was doing right and Duggar, and it's been a battle, and it will continue to be a battle because that's what competition is at practice. Zevi is preparing like he's going to play every game, and that was kind of my push for him is you define your circumstances, don't let your circumstances define you. And he was one of the first guys up here, watching the film Sunday and preparing as if he's the starter. And I think it says a lot for him as just his maturity as a player, not to sulk and be pouty. Because in all honesty, Jackson Potter has been Zevi's biggest supporter, and those two are close. They have a great relationship, and Zevi is doing that for Potter right now. And who knows what the season holds? I don't know who's going to, rise to the occasion, or injuries may happen. So everybody on our team needs to get ready, not just at the quarterback position.
With some of the offensive line stuff, did you think they were kind of getting moved a little bit or kind of just out of place? What was kind of your take on them?
I think there's a little bit of lack of communication on who they were moving to, which stemmed from them being able to penetrate the line of scrimmage. There are some things schematically that we need to clean up as coaches. The ability to not adjust is on me more than anybody else, and so I'm not putting it on the kids. We coach certain things, but you don't see every single look, especially against a coordinator that's been at many places. But we got to adjust better and come out in the second half better than what we did. There's no question about that, and that's on me more than anybody else.
No Devin and then no Kale. What's their status right now?
I'm not sure where Devin's at. Kale is going to start taking reps with us, expecting to play this week. How much, I don't know. That's not really up to me right now. I'm excited to get him back. He's been a great asset for just us on the back end and collectively as a defense, having him out there. He's a veteran player with a ton of experience, and he's going to be in the rotation when he's healthy for sure.
Going back to the quarterback situation, is that something that you see as fluid as far as we saw Potter, we saw Duggar kind of thrown in there, or is that more situational because we were trying to get something going with the run game against Idaho?
Yeah, I think, Julian has a different skill set than the rest of them. He's a great athlete, and he can operate the offense. He showed that through camp. But they're just two completely different type of skill sets in which you're working with. So when we weren't clicking on all cylinders at times with the pass game because the run game wasn't working, it was just we had to make something happen, and there was no better time for me. A lot has been made of like when he comes in after a turnover and where we're at on the field. The reality was we weren't moving the ball very far anyways, right? So for me, it was just trying to give Julian an opportunity to make the most of the moment and see what he can do. But looking back on it, Jackson played well. He just got to make sure that we're aligned right and we operate right out of the right formations and the motions. And I think he showed that in the 2-minute drive more than anything else. I thought he responded really well, didn't hang his head. He's been that way since I've been here as far as being really mature and handling really the circumstance that he's put in and making the most of it. So I was happy with him, and he's only going to get better. He's a young player with his first career start, but he is really mature, and he is very accurate, pocket passer. That's why like a couple of those that got away from him I was somewhat shocked by. And as I've told every quarterback that I've ever interacted with, you make every decision. You don't have to make every play, and there's a difference. I think quarterbacks at times feel like they got to make every single play, but they're making every single decision on the field. And so it's their job to minimize error as much as possible, just as it is to make a huge splash play that everybody's excited about.
And then as far as, I know it's early, but just things that jump out at you right away for San Diego State film and kind of the message to the guys this week.
Yeah, for us, it's always going to be more so about how do we improve on the errors in which we had inside of a game and focus on ourselves right now, especially on the morning meeting of Mondays is more just like the errors in which we need to make sure that we correct before we see them again. But as far as them as a team, I think they're a really stout team. I think their defense is really solid. I know Coach Ulrich. He was at University of South Dakota, and then he was at University of Idaho, and he joined San Diego State staff. So I'm familiar with the defensive structure in which he runs, and they're really good on defense. I don't care what level you're playing or opponent you're playing to hold somebody to 95 total yards in a game and shut somebody out with multiple all-conference and preseason award guys, as well as one of the top defensive players in the country playing DN for them. It's going to be a challenge, and our guys need to respond to that challenge, and we need to get ready to play our best football this upcoming week. As far as their offense, I think they got some real skill. Obviously, a fresh quarterback this season, and we got to make sure defensively we do our part to minimize, explosive plays and take out some of their key players.
Coach, when you kind of obviously look back at the tape, I know the run game was probably a focus. Was there anything else that jumped out to you that maybe you didn't notice kind of in live action?
No, I noticed how, poorly we were running the football. That was evident to the whole world. But at the end of the day, that we're not going to let one game define us. A little bit, this offense and the players that were here prior are kind of used to more spread and passing the ball. There's some comfort in going fast, and we still have that at our arsenal. We need to make sure that we keep players fresh and have maybe a little bit more rotation in the skill just so that they can last for 4 quarters in a game and still play with the same level of intensity and speed on the field. And that's just not offense, that's defense as well. Naturally, just in our system on defense, there's a natural flow to how we rotate defensive linemen. But on the back end of our defense right now, we could have gotten, Tucker Large a little bit more breather, and Matt Durrance and Caleb Francel, and Anthony Plano's a young Mike, but he's got young legs. So I felt good with him in there. I felt good with how he was playing. But there are some guys that really stood out across the board on the defense side of the ball, and we just need to make sure that we continue to stay consistent and not get complacent.
You mentioned, some of the communication issues with the offensive line and some of that. When you kind of looked at what was going wrong in the run game, do you feel like it was more of a product of the offensive line, or do you feel there were missed opportunities for the running backs as well?
Well, I think the running backs run to where, their read starts, and when you can't get to your read because the line of scrimmage is getting penetrated, it makes it harder. There are some opportunities that we maybe, could have made somebody miss, but at the same time, we got to make sure that we're given at least the opportunity to see their read before the penetration's, making them cut against the grain or going the direction in which the play is not supposed to go. Some of it is coaching, and that's on me, and there's no question about that. Certain scenarios, I don't know if we put our best players in the best situation, and I'll take full accountability for that. But we need to grow, we need to get better, and we're on to a new week, and I'm excited for that. Obviously excited to get the win. Not necessarily always excited about the execution. There's positives to learn from that. The whole game in general, I just feel like we've been through a moment now as a team with a lot of new players. Nobody hung their head. Everybody responded when it mattered most. And like I said last time we spoke, in a week nobody's going to be talking about the score of the game. They're just going to be caring that it was a win.
When you're watching the film of the offense, what's something you saw that you liked or you wanted to see more of, or you guys need to build on that you took out of that first week?
Yeah, I thought the ability to respond inside of a game, just T-Free had the most catches on the whole group, and he had a couple drops in an earlier series, but he was critical in the 2-minute drive. I felt like Noga and Meredith did a really good job as far as making plays, especially Meredith's fourth down play at the end zone, which was a critical play in the game, looking back on it. And the play right prior to that, we gave up a run that was a tackle for a loss. It was 3rd and 1. Had we had gotten that from the 3-yard line, we're looking at a completely different scenario than a critical moment in the game when it's 4th and 3. And Potter put the ball in the right spot, and Meredith made a great contested catch. And the only thing off of that I talked to Josh in game and this morning was like, we can't kill ourselves with the celebrations. And I think for Josh, he's not a selfish player at all. He is a team first guy. It's why he's been voted captain. All he cares about is winning. It's just the moment of making a big play, spun the ball, but that sets us back to the 20. And in a game, what turned out to be a lot of field position issues, right? We were backed up the whole game. The defense doesn't have much breathing room. You're going to get 20 yards, and then they could be punting from the 50-yard line, and you're back into that same backed up situation. So we just got to make sure that have our emotions in check. I felt like for the most part, our guys did that throughout the game. There's some talking back and forth, but there always will be. But we didn't have any personal fouls or dumb penalties, which ultimately hurt them. And I respect Coach Ford, and we spoke after the game, and it's just a competitive rivalry, and those guys were up to play. And I'm not saying that we weren't. We knew who we were playing and how important this was. For me, it wasn't about a rivalry. It was about us collectively together for the first time, being able to step out there and have the opportunity to execute together as the Washington State football team 2025. So I felt like the defense showed consistency, but at the same time, we need to improve tackling. We definitely need to improve the tackling. Our swarm was there. We just need to make, space tackles on a scrambling quarterback a little bit better and cleaner. And we got to be able to wrap up and make the tackle at the line of scrimmage rather than bouncing it, and just relying on the swarm of somebody else making the ball. But it's kind of how we play defense with a level of physicality and consistency throughout the game. And I was pleased with their response throughout the game, if anything. We fumbled the ball in the red zone there with the situation to hang our heads because we hadn't had anything going for us offensively, and not one person looked like they weren't ready for the moment. And that's what I would take. If you have a strong defense and you can, give your offense opportunities, which they got multiple opportunities, just with turnovers and the stops and responding when they're getting the ball on the plus side of the field, you have the opportunity to have success as a whole football team because you win games with the consistency of how you don't give up points. So overall, met the score goal, but we need to get better. There's so many glaring errors that showed up just in general, offense, defense, special teams that have been addressed this morning, and we'll get ready to take the next step moving forward.
Not trying to get too big picture here, but how valuable is this game for you and your staff getting familiar with a future conference opponent, getting ready to face this team as they join the Pac-12 next year?
Yeah, I think it's important. Obviously, Washington State played San Diego State, so you see some of the scheme stuff offensively. Obviously, their defense with the new defensive coordinator and Rob Arch is slightly different, but again, knowing him and what he expects and the success that he's had throughout his career, I kind of well aware of what we're going up against defensively. And then you look at the players that they have playing defense. This is a veteran group. I think they got really one underclassman in their outside linebacker, who is also a preseason. I think their linebackers are really good, and I think they got a lot of depth on the back end with a lot of length and good speed, and they got one of the best edge rushers in the country.
You talked about the defense and kind of making that stand. How much does that kind of maybe come from the fact that you look around, every guy in the field, with the kind of the exception of Polano, has played an extensive role in the past. Obviously, a couple guys who won national titles with you guys, and then obviously Washington State guys who are already here have a ton of experience. Does that kind of go into the not hanging your heads?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that if they've been with me, it's been preached constantly for years. That's all these guys know. But there was a lot of guys that stood out. It wasn't just the guys that were South Dakota State players. It was, Ram Stevenson had a great game. Bryson Lamb was the defensive big player of the game for us. The DNs, Malaki had a huge play. there are certain guys that kind of stood out. We had our opportunities, and those guys made the most of it. And it's a little bit of a product of staying fresh, so those guys can play really well. But yeah, I think our group has added, the players that came with me have added just a different level of maturity maybe. But that's not taking away from those that came in the portal before or that stayed. Those guys are really mature as well. Like Ram Stevenson was voted a captain, and there's a guy that has worked himself into a really great player. Bobby Terrell, I mean, he was listed as a 2. We started Buddha, and he played arguably, more consistent than Buddha, honestly, at times. And Buddha's going to get better, and there are certain things that Bobby did really, really well and played extremely hard. So I think defensively, there's a culture there and a connection there that, and a selflessness there that allows you to have the opportunity to have success.
Take us back to the moment you told Jackson that he would be the starter. What was that moment like, and where was it, and what was his reaction?
Yeah, I think Jackson kind of knew how he was playing through camp. There was a level of confidence in him. Everybody writes articles, right? And so I try to get the players not to pay attention to the outside distractions and things that are written, because most things that are written aren't always true, and the dialogue is spun a certain way. And for him, back in the spring, I told him, Zevi, and that the best players are going to play, and I was honest the whole way through. And he just kind of kept getting better and better and better, and he wasn't really focused on new competition coming in and was worried about his own performance. But overall, he was obviously extremely excited. Obviously, I didn't want it out there. That's well known. That probably is more, the gamesmanship in all of this. I know you guys want to know every little detail, but the reality is the only thing that matters is winning games. And so for me, it was a decision made for the football team. And I was happy that Jackson got the moment with his family to share the news. And I had the opportunity to meet his family last Friday night in the hotel, and I know that they were super excited for his opportunity. He's worked extremely hard for this, and he's only going to get better. He's a young quarterback that has a ton of learning still to do. I don't know if you're ever done learning at quarterback, because there's always new wrinkles that happen for you and adjustments inside of a game. And he's taken all of it with stride, and he'll continue to have blunders here and there. He's a young quarterback. They all do. And the more he sees, the better he'll get.
To ask a really obvious question maybe, but is he going to be starting this week as well?
Yes.
Okay. And then my real question is just, now that you've had your first home opener in Pullman and kind of seen the environment, as well as having that Vandal side filled as well, just your overall reaction to the fans that came out in the first home game.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome, just the student section to fill that side and to make the noise that they made. Obviously, there were certain moments in the game where we didn't make it exciting to cheer for, right? But if they can understand that their role matters just as much as everybody in the community to come out and keep making an impact, I think it's really evident that a lot of players that are going into college want to play for a place that cares about their football program, and they grow up wanting to be in front of an atmosphere like that and experience full stadiums. That's what they grew up watching. And so if we want to have success here, win, lose, draw, we got to show up and support the football team and be loud on third down and make noise, because I've been in some games where the fans honestly have kept us in games because of their impact of false starts. And so the more volume that they can make it, and make it hard on our defense to communicate, because if it's making it hard on us, it's going to make it extremely hard for an offense.
At what point during fall camp did you feel like Jackson was starting to take the lead? And I guess what kinds of plays was he making to kind of convince you of that?
You guys love these guys. Yeah, he was consistent. He kept getting better with. He was great in the red zone. He was great in 2-minute. His accuracy. He took the least amount of sacks consistently. We chart every little detail, and so for me, it was the more and more at which day, I'd probably say 9. There was a little bit of separation, but it was never a lot. It was always close between him, Duggar, and Zevi. And towards the end there, but just some critical errors and some situational things. When you're in a competition, I think every rep matters. And it's not just always about the play that they make. I think everybody gets caught up in the play. Was it the right decision? Because the result of the play, we train the action and not the result. They could do something wrong and be in the wrong spot and pick off a ball or, make a play here or there. But the reality is every player on our team needs to learn from whether they do it right or wrong. Was it the actual right decision? Was it actually the right technique? Because if you just ignore those things and you live off of the result, the players will never learn. And that error is going to come back to haunt you, and you create a habit of just doing your own thing.
Outside of Kale and Devin, are there any other guys unsure about health-wise for this week?
Nah, not that comes to mind. I felt like we made it out for the most part healthy. Obviously with every game there's some dings, but nobody's going to be really in a limited role. And
then any changes to the two deep or same as last week?
Yeah, same. There's going to be a constant review of the roster in itself. It just as we go, the best players got to play. Not that comes to mind right now, obviously. I don't really look at our two deep at D-line and say, I know it means a lot to the players to be named the starter, but how much we rotate. Bobby played just as much as close to Ram, and he came in as a 2, right? So it doesn't mean just because you start, you stay in the game. You got to produce inside the game, and when one guy's on, he'll stay in the game a little longer than the other. You got to produce to be on the field. So overall, no, not much. We'll see how it works this week and how guys are preparing and playing, because I think after a game like that, when you have some success, you can get complacent on one side of the ball, like the defense, which we got to make sure it doesn't happen. And offensively, there can be guys that step into roles that maybe they're preparing better and executing better inside of practice that we look at and say, maybe this guy deserves this role right now because of what he's doing currently in the moment. I'm evaluated on what do you do now, right? So are the players, and the best players got to play.
And then we saw Kenny kind of take the most cornerback snaps, obviously, outside Jamori and Colby. What was it about Kenny in fall camp, even going back to the spring, that kind of earned him that role over a couple guys who were veterans, that you guys brought in?
Yeah, I think Kenny is a kid that takes coaching. I think he's grown a lot in that aspect as far as taking the coaching and hearing you out and not taking things like when you talk to him personal. And because of those things, he actually is now listening and not just hearing your voice, and he can make adjustments. He's always been a player that could process information. He's engaged in on special teams meetings and can answer questions out loud. And I think, the more you point questions and they can actually reciprocate the things that have been addressed already or taught, that gives you a certain level of comfort that if he gets in the game, he's going to be able to execute it because he understands it. So Kenny is a very athletic, smooth player. He's probably one of the smoothest DBs that we have on our team as far as the hip swivel and redirection skills. And he's coming into his own. We got to continue to work on little things with him, but he's a confident player. I know that. And I'm excited for his growth on the team. He is a guy that has a voice on the team, and he's got charisma to him, and people naturally gravitate to him. And he's impactful just based off of his attitude and how he goes about his business. So I'm excited about what he can become because he's still a young player too.
On that last Idaho drive, were you surprised at all that they went for the tie and not the lead?
No, not really. I think that they were trusting in their defense.